Aloha, everybody, and welcome to the Jason Jones Show. We are broadcasting from the epic Epoch Times studios, and I'm really excited about today's guest, my friend, Jan Jekielek. Jan is senior editor at Epoch Times and the host of American Thought Leaders, where he had some of the most important conversations out there on the Chinese Communist Party, human rights, and the nature of tyranny in the modern world. Jan has been on the front lines for years exposing what's really happening in China, not just politically, but what it means for real people, especially religious believers and dissidents. His new book, Killed to Order, China's Organ Harvesting Industry, takes on one of the most horrifying crimes of our time. This is the story of how the CCP has turned prisoners of conscience, especially Falun Gong practitioners, into a living organ bank. These are peaceful people targeted for their beliefs and then exploited in a system that is as evil as anything we've seen in the modern age. This is not just about China. This is about all of us, our silence, our complicity, and whether we're willing to stand with the most vulnerable. And I'll just say this before we begin. Through the Vulnerable People Project, we're going to be mailing a copy of Jan's book to every bishop in the United States, along with a white paper detailing the CCP's war on religion and human dignity, from the persecution of Falun Dafa practitioners to Muslim Uyghurs to the relentless pressure and abuse of Christians in China, especially the Catholic Church. And we can't forget heroes like Jimmy Lai, who sits in prison today for standing for truth. Jan's a great journalist, a good interviewer, and a good friend. And I'm really grateful to have him here on the show. And I want to say this about Jan Jekielek. I'm not used to these teleprompters. This is fancy. Jan Jekielek is the best interviewer out there ever. Like, puts Larry King to shame. So American Thought Leaders is one of my favorite shows. It's my favorite of its kind. And really, there's no one, Jan, who knows how to interview people, who is as thoughtful and as empathetic as you. So I'm really nervous to interview you. So welcome to the Jason Jones Show.
Thank you for the very kind introduction. And and thank you for your work helping, the people that basically don't get help from anyone. That's part of what you've done, and that's something I really respect about you.
Well, I founded the Vulnerable People Project for that reason. I thought there are those communities that are outside of social concern, those communities where there's not enthusiasm for supporting. It's hard to raise funds. It's hard to get publicity. Who supports them? And I thought, well, people who are talented will probably, do it the other way. So those, I tell the Uyghur and the Yazidis, I'm sorry, I'm all you got, but it's better than nothing. And so that's how I feel. Yeah, and I'm so glad you wrote this book, because at the Vulnerable People Project, our biggest challenge is that we have to try to make people aware of things that are so unbelievably evil that they can't wrap their mind around it, that it's even true. And then I really believe that people are so kind and they're so compassionate by nature that when they hear something as horrible as forced organ harvesting, they want to say, this is propaganda, these are lies, this can't be true, this is hyperbole, this might happen a one-off here or there, but there's no system of forced organ harvesting. Because it's not that they're callous or cold-hearted, it's that they actually, in a way, have such soft hearts that they can't steel themselves to look the hard truth in the face. And so I'm grateful that you've written this book, because we really all need to begin to pay attention to what's happening in China, not just because of the travesty and abuse of the people of China, but it's corrupting our own morals and values here in the United States. Yeah. So how are we going to get people to pay attention to something so unbelievably evil?
Well, apparently I'm deeply touched by the way that you're choosing to send this book to the bishops, or in America, or
well, no, we've
world?
already ordered 500 copies. So it's going to go to every bishop in the United States. We're about to order another 500 copies, and we're going to begin just sending them to key cardinals and patriarchs around the world. And I want everyone to buy this book and give it to your local parish priest, and buy it today, because we want to push you to the New York Times bestseller list.
Okay, honestly, you're almost going to make me tear up here. No, I'll explain why, right? You talked about how unbelievable right, this whole thing sounds on the face of it, right?
Yeah.
When I first heard about it, there was this film, those of us that are a little older, okay, will remember it. In 2005, there was a film that came out called The Island. Okay, big Michael Bay, like, lots of explosions, Ewan McGregor, Scarlett Johansson, massive budget. And what the story was that there's these people living in an old nuclear silo. They don't know that. They think this is their community. And what they don't know is that they're actually clones of very affluent people who are just kind of being raised to be used as organ donors, basically. That's the story. And it's like, so when I first, started realizing this is real in early 2006, this is around the time, right? I just kept thinking about The Island, right? Because I had seen this film. And it's just, The Island is obviously a very fantastical film, right? So when I would start talking to people about this issue, basically the evidence hit me over the head. I'm kind of one of these people that I don't, here's the difference. I knew what the CCP was. I knew the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, was killing people for their faith, literally, okay? I knew there's a reason the First Amendment is the First Amendment in the Bill of Rights, okay? It's the fundamental thing that we need to have protected from government, okay? It's the freedom of speech, it's the freedom of assembly, freedom of conscience, freedom of belief, freedom of religion. All of this, right, is the fundamental thing that we need, that is given to us from God, right? I believe, but it's also should be the fundamental right of any human being, whether or not you believe in God, okay? So if there's a regime that's killing people for refusing to change their faith, for example, that's not a liberalizing regime. See, back in the 2000s, early 2000s, everybody believed that we were going to change China. This was the mantra.
I believed it. China's going to become like us. I campaigned for MFN for China.
Well, oh my God.
Forgive me.
Tell me it isn't. Tell me it ain't so.
I believe that. I said, I remember being so happy because I listened to Rush Limbaugh. I mean, this was the conservative.
By the way, MFN is, for those that might not know, most favored nation status. Yes. It basically made it easier for China to trade with America, right? It's like a horrible mistake, right? But you're to the point, okay? Left, right, up, down, Republican, Democrat. It was like 90. It was a 95-5 issue or 96-4 issue or something like that, okay? But I was like, guys, but they're like. They're killing people, literally, right? They will not, all Falun Gong deaths in prisons, okay, are to be considered suicides. We're allowed to work on these people until they break or until they're dead, okay? This is how, we knew this. So we knew that this liberalization, this is not going to become a Taiwan. This is not going to become a South Korea or whatever. This was the dream, right? This is what the handlers, the bamboozlers of the barbarians, as they call the Westerners the barbarians. There were these experts. Actually, Jiang Zemin, the dictator of the time when he started the Falun Gong persecution, his job had been for years before he ascended to kind of the pinnacle of the Chinese Communist Party, had been to be this bamboozler, the guy, the handler that would say, look, I'm one of the reformers. Let's work together. Let's create these great relationships. There's these hardliners. We don't want them to, but don't make too much of a mess here, right? Don't say anything out loud because then the hardliners might get the upper hand. Work with us. We're the reformers, right?
I was in the late 90s and asked to help bring churches into China.
Right.
They bamboozled us.
Yeah. Well, so, and I think there might still be people, see, this is actually very interesting to me because, it's very difficult to work in any regime, right? Because you have to make the deal with the devil. If you're media, you have to make the deal with the devil. I'm not going to report on certain things. If I report on those things, you're gone forever. Or for enough time that you've you contritely admit your mistakes, maybe they'll let you back in, right? But then you've really made the deal with the devil, okay? And so I sympathize with that too, because we do want to know what's going on in there. Like for us, we had all our journalists early on at Epoch Times, got arrested and serving, 5-10 year prison sentences and stuff like that. This is like in the very early 2000s, maybe 2000 itself. I can't remember exactly. I think right when we started, really, in 2000. But so we know we've developed our sources in a different way, and we make a point of publishing on all the things that they don't want you to, right? Because no one else really will do it. There's people that try, there's people that do a good job. Especially now, it's shifted a bit because it's more acceptable. A lot more people understand that communist China, that Xi Jinping's not our favorite uncle, and and I'm obviously joking, but it's been a long road. And when I first started talking about this issue, people literally, because it's particularly so unbelievable, like the island or whatever, people would literally leave the conversation mentally. And I saw this often.
What year was it? When did this start?
This is 2006. When reality hit me over the head, right, so to speak, right? There's basically there were a couple of significant whistleblowers, and there were the two what we call the two Davids, and the people who are in this space. Okay, David Kilgore and David Matus, human rights lawyers from Canada. They basically did a report on. They assessed what's really happening when we found out there's 2-week wait time and there were a few pieces of evidence. They actually found 17 lines of evidence that all pointed in the same direction, and 0 lines of evidence that pointed to some sort of credible ethical system of transplantation, which of course, that this is the funniest part in a way. I mean, it's not funny, but they've never credibly defended, they've mostly never even defended it. They've never credibly defended what's happening over there. It's like, okay, so we have this phenomenon. We've got, 60 to 90,000, 60 to 100,000 transplants happening annually. How are you doing this? Right? If it's not killed to order organ harvesting, which I can explain how that's different, by the way, than your run-of-the-mill, horrible in itself organ trafficking, which happens in other parts of the world. But how are you doing this, right? And they've never actually done that, right? They've never provided remotely any semblance of credible response, which is part of actually another piece of evidence that you can add to the giant volumes of evidence that we have at this point.
When you're talking, I'm thinking, we already have the island because we're a human family, and we're just one step removed from when you clone yourself. Like, we're stealing organs from our human family members.
Yeah.
That's just not much different than if you clone yourself and then you take organs from another human person that was created from your material. So we're already living in a way on the island, and I don't know if this is true, but in a way we're stealing from our closest family members, because I've heard that Muslim Uyghur organs are sought after by wealthy Muslims because they're halal organs.
Yeah, there's a market for halal organs. It's a horrible, it's a horrible thing
like
to
what
contemplate.
A halal organ is,
well, just to kind of provide a little bit of historical context, okay? There's this low level of transplant industry in China prior to the year 2000. The Chinese Communist Party does its own census, realizes that there's 70 to 100 million people practicing Falun Gong, truthfulness, compassion, forbearance, this spiritual discipline, very grassroots, very bottom up. Unlike, communism, which is kind of obscenely, I call it obscenely hierarchical, which it is, right? And Jiang Zemin decides to outlaw it. They push mass propaganda through the population. They dehumanize these people. We have this quirk in our psychology that when we start believing that, or are allowed to believe that people are lesser than us somehow or dangerous to us, it lets us do bad things to them. And this has unfortunately played out at many times in history. And this is something that you're absolutely no stranger to yourself in the work that you do. So this
René
all
Girard
happens.
says, the French anthropologist from Stanford, wrote that process that's repeated over and over and over again in human history tragically has been, in tyrannical governments, the organizational principle of society, which is what we've seen with the CCP.
And I'm constantly being, as I read more Girard or talk to more Girardians, so to speak, like yourself, I'm being brought over to more and more of his viewpoint. I didn't even know about him until about 10 years ago, to be perfectly honest.
It's tragically,
right?
most people don't know about him today. So,
but anyway, so they dehumanized them, and then they incarcerated a massive amount of them because they just proved very hard to re-educate. The goal wasn't to kill them all, by the way, right? The goal was to transform them. The Chinese Communist Party had this massive system of re-education or transformation, which it's been running with all sorts of different black classes for decades, right? So you try to break people, and if they don't cooperate, you kill them, right? Like you've seen, the 3-body problem, right? There was this amazing series recently, crazy sci-fi series, I think on Netflix, right? that what was happening there, right, at the beginning. I've never seen such an accurate portrayal of, Cultural Revolution time in China. It was unbelievable that they were allowed to do that. I still don't understand how that happened, but it's worth watching. But basically the guy there is he's refusing to submit to the party. So eventually these people haze him and kill him, the students, basically, right? And the daughter in the process becomes a nihilist and invites the aliens, sort of thing, right? But it's actually, this is really important, because this is what they basically said: look, if you give up your faith, Falun Gong practitioner, you can go home. This is actually what kind of, I don't know what it's
the
called.
Nazis did the same thing.
Yeah.
There's a powerful movie, you probably have seen it, by Terrence Malick, The Hidden Life, about the Austrian farmer who refused to say the loyalty oath. Right before they were about to kill him, they brought his wife to him. And they said, all you have to do is say the loyalty oath and you can go home to your wife and children. And he said, I can't. It's
devastating, right? And this is right? And this is the thing. So all you have to do is give me your soul, and we're good to go. Life free, right? Like,
yeah, this is not a big deal. Just give me your soul.
Exactly. So these people wouldn't do it. They built this massive industry. I'll get to the halal organs momentarily, because I want to just explain the context, right? They build, the number of transplant hospitals grows geometrically. Okay, 146 hospitals we reach kind of somewhere in the 2010, I think by 2010 or something like that. And this is, so they basically, through this mass incarceration of Falun Gong practitioners, through this process of trying to re-educate them, some very evil person figures out we can use these people as a living organ bank, like in the island, And, they create a database, blood type them, tissue type them, organ scan them. So now if a wealthy foreigner, let's say even from America, comes, they're already pre-matched to someone, so you can kill to order, right? This is why the book is called Killed to Order, because the people, that's how you get the short wait times, okay? But so this whole massive, monstrous industry is built, like a whole system, bureaucracy, very hard to dismantle, as we know, right, how these bureaucracies work, wherever they are, never mind communist ones. And by 2014, 2015, no one really does anything about it. Even there's about these international organizations that run cover for it, basically. I mean, a debate about why. And they add
Cardinal Parolin from the Catholic Church went to an organ harvesting convention in China and came back and said it was a beautiful example of what Catholic social teaching should be.
Well,
and this, to me, as a Catholic, was heartbreakingly scandalous.
It was, I know exactly what you're talking about, and it was heartbreaking because, in effect, see, this is what the CCP always tries to do, right? They're always trying to find ways to create a veneer of legitimacy around the horrible things that they do, right? Even with Tiananmen Square, right? Like, somehow Scrowcroft goes to Beijing afterwards, right, and says, after this happens, we're going to ride this out, don't worry, guys. I mean, I'm paraphrasing, obviously. I didn't know that this happened, but how did that happen? Well, they also have very powerful tools. I have a whole chapter in Killed to Order about how they make us complicit. Not just us, how they make the Chinese people complicit. They're the whole, a central project of communist systems, okay, is basically elicit. Again, I really, it's very interesting. You give up your, all you need to do is give me your soul, right?
Yeah.
But so what they do is they do it one little bit at a time, actually. So they'll put you in various no-win situations, or they take advantage of your greed, because now you have a financial relationship, so it's a lot harder to notice there's a problem if there's, money flowing, so to speak, right? For us, we just have that, there's the, Mark Twain has a famous quote, I never remember what it is exactly, about this, that it's hard, if someone is financially motivated in a particular direction, it's hard for them to see the thing that would subvert that relationship, right, so to speak. So no one does anything about it, right? And there's these kinds of, conferences and these veneer created by various organizations, and sad to say, yes, the Vatican did participate in that, in effect. I don't think it was their purpose, or,
They were bamboozled.
I think they were bamboozled. And we get to the Uyghur people being dehumanized, again, incarcerated to the millions, 1 million, 2 million, and as part of what we officially in the US know to be a genocide, meaning the total, and this is, I'm talking about the legal definition, not the the word genocide is brandished about very casually these days, about like, you know, kind of war, like deaths in war and stuff like that. Yes, that's horrible, just to be clear. It's not genocide, it's very specific.
Yeah.
Destruction in whole of or in part of a group of people as a matter of policy, okay? So that we officially believe, and this is very hard to get these designations, by the way, for anyone that's watching. Like, from governments do not like to designate things as genocide, right? It's like because it puts you on the hook, kind of, right? Because we believe this.
Because then you either have to change your policy or then live with the contradiction.
Right. And no, exactly.
What we did is we call it what it was, and now we're just living with the contradiction.
Yeah, exactly. That's the part that, you know, should disturb us, obviously, a lot. But basically, in Xinjiang, this is a much smaller population than Falun Gong. Falun Gong was all walks of life, mainly Han Chinese, but every ethnic minority. You know, 1 in 13 Chinese was doing this. So this is, but you have to have people actually incarcerated in prisons to do it, because you have to have access to get that person and use them and have them in the database, do all the extensive testing. In Xinjiang, which functions basically like a prison in itself as a province, it's a police-controlled province. Actually, my good friend Ethan Gutmann, one of the heroes of this kind of exposing this, doing the research on this, he just published a book called The Xinjiang Procedure, where he looks specifically around the issue of how does forced organ harvesting in Xinjiang work, because this is relatively new and we're just kind of figuring out the kind of the details of it. So another book. I should be promoting my book, but Ethan's book, you know, this is actually a research. So my book is more of a popular book. I bring together a whole lot of research of people like Ethan, the two Davids, the China Tribunal.
And this book has an appendix
It has an appendix. Well, it has all the references, of course, but it also has an appendix with, like, one of them is, you know, if people say this can't be true, what are some things you could talk about? You know, like, I have, it's sort of like the questions that I keep getting asked over 20 years. I put them in a Q&A and an appendix, and another appendix is just what we can do. And I have amazing things you can do all the way from the grassroots level to the federal level. And there's even there's new legislation just from 3 days ago now that's actually, you know, kind of just been launched to counter this specific thing, bipartisan too, which is amazing.
Well, and a lot
Cruz
of my
Markley. But let me get back to the Uyghurs. I have to. I'm kind of winding here. Okay, but this is the tragedy, right? The problem with these atrocity level, you know, crimes against humanity level stuff, genocide level stuff, right, is that it spreads. This is just what this is the lesson of history. This is why we have a genocide convention, okay? It's supposed to be like, if genocide is happening or something this extreme is happening, we should act. We need to, this is the one thing where their intervention is required, right? Why? Because it spreads elsewhere. Like, if someone is doing that level of extreme thing to human beings, you think they're just going to stay doing that over there and then they'll be done and they'll be happy? No.
My first book, The Race to Save Our Century, was about how one genocide leads to the next genocide. The Armenian genocide led to the Holocaust, and it's the
100%. So 15 years, Falun Gong, they built this monstrous industry on the backs of Falun Gong. No one, I won't say no one, but almost no one does anything. Very little government, you know, sort of attempts to respond. A little bit, some resolutions here and there, some observations. They add the Uyghurs, okay? And the Uyghurs are now being blood type, tissue type, not just in the prisons, in these concentration camps, but in their homes, okay? So it's like they take it, they really,
where's
they
Turkey?
really ramped it.
Where's Saudi Arabia? No, they're still signing agreements with the CCP.
Yeah, although that may be changing too, and we'll see, right? But so that's what happens. And now, okay, I'm seeing increased dehumanizing rhetoric against Christians. Okay, and that's just, I saw it anecdotally.
They just took the priest passports 2 weeks ago.
Exactly, right? So there's a bunch of things happening. There's the Zion Church being rolled up, right? I mean, see, just to comment on the Zion Church, right?
Yeah.
They really tried extremely hard to be apolitical. Like I mean, I haven't watched.
I've been frustrated with them in the past.
I haven't watched the church services, right? Yeah. But they were really trying to, you know, take any semblance of politics because they knew the regime would crush them, right? Their crime was getting too popular because during COVID they took their things online, right? They took their church services online. And then it just
that was the problem with Falun Gong.
It got too popular, exactly. And so they've rolled up that. There's still a whole bunch of pastors in jail, and with Catholics, exactly. They're controlling
They're
the
disappearing
Catholic
bishops.
clergy now.
There's at least 10 bishops that have been vanished for crimes such as taking care of abandoned children.
Yeah. I don't even
vanished.
know. I don't even know what to say to that. But yes, this is the kind of stuff they do. I didn't know that, but yes, I completely believe that that's what happened. And so what does that mean? Like, does that, I can't predict the future, but I know that when there's this uptick, Bob Fu over at China Aid, who's been kind of, basically a ministry that supports Christians in China, right? And tries to argue for their human rights, does really kind of a very powerful advocate. He agrees with me that this dehumanizing rhetoric, like he's seeing it more systemically. I saw it anecdotally, right? So I'm worried. Are they looking for another group? Well, no one's really done anything, right? Except we are actually seeing, it seems like in America there's this awakening. This is part of the reason this last year I wrote this book, because I feel like for some reason our social consciousness, maybe it was COVID, maybe it was watching those people being welded into their homes, in China, that totalitarian mentality being not the totalitarian mentality, not just in China, by the way, being laid out, right? So I feel like we're a bit wiser somehow. And there's this, multiple, at the federal level, multiple pieces of legislation have passed the House near unanimously. And now there's a Senate companion bill, renamed, it's called the Falun Gong and Victims of Forced Organ Harvesting Protection Act. It actually has some teeth. It'll save a few lives. I could talk about how. But my point is that if we have an opportunity today that I haven't seen in 20 years. Basically, that's what I'm saying.
Your book's already number one in many categories.
Yeah,
So
exactly. And the
people
interest
are
in the book
waking
is
up.
wild.
And
like I truly wasn't expecting there to be number one in communism and socialism, bestseller. As we're recording, this is the book launch day.
yeah,
right?
I can't believe you made time for the Jason Jones show
No.
today.
The Jason Jones show is
and we're really
required
because you're going to be doing a lot of big mainstream outlets. And as you see, they're corrupting the powerful and the elite with the halal organs, corrupting the Gulf states.
Oh, see, it's fun. I didn't get to the halal organs part, but yes, there's a preference among Muslim super elites. Apparently, I mean, I have not done the research into this myself, but I'm told this by people who I do trust, that there's this preference. It's again sort of so macabre, right, when you think about it. But so there's a particular market for these Uyghur organs or Uyghur organs. Uyghur is more the way they call themselves. Uyghur is sort of how we say it, more in the West.
If you say Uyghur, people don't know what you're saying, so we say Uyghur. Yeah, so it's tragic. And now how, you had a book launch yesterday, which was the biggest. I was envious as an author. I was like, I never had a book launch like this at the Kennedy Trump Center, filled with the most Washington, D.C. elite. And this city was in a storm panic. Like, oh my gosh. Run for your lives.
God, so many people. I think we got fewer people than we would have otherwise, but an astonishing number of people braved the tornado warning. A tornado warning, like what? How does this happen? Right? We talk about spiritual battles, right? And like you could just why would there be a tornado warning?
My hotel told me don't leave, go by water. We're gonna lose power. Nothing. It was like a little bit of rain, but I was like, oh, poor Jan. There's gonna be nobody there. And it was filled.
It was pretty. I wish it was more filled, but it was pretty darn filled. Yes.
And the people that were there were like heavy hitters. I saw ambassadors. I saw Eric Metaxas. Eric Metaxas. It's just a lot of influential DC folks, and so they're paying attention. That's really something else. And then you had Rob Schneider, who's one of the funniest guys around. I thought having a comedian as the guest interviewer for a book that is not funny was interesting, and then I was taken aback at how thoughtful he was. And
I talk about that. Okay, so it was actually he made a joke about this, because I was like, I kind of imagined him to be kind of like the characters in his films, which are not terribly thoughtful, But like I saw that he had this. You should cut this into the interview.
Okay.
But there's a very short joke that he does.
All right, we'll cut it in.
About forced organ harvesting.
If you don't want communism, I'm telling you, just look what's happened in China. They have forced organ harvesting. Just take your kidney. You get busted for like, traffic stop. You wake up, oh, I don't feel good. I'm missing something today. China's the only country, if you drink and smoke a shitload, it's actually better for your health. Like, oh man, you don't want my kidney. It's f***ed up, man. You don't want it. I drink, I f***ed up. No, I'm f***ed up. No, I feel like shit all day long. You don't want my...
Who does jokes about forced organ harvesting? But it was funny,
yeah.
And especially if you understand forced organ harvesting. But I knew that most people don't, and I realized he is educating people.
Yes.
Rob Schneider has made a decision to do a joke. A lot of people won't fully understand what he's talking about, but it's funny, and he's educating people. And so, like, this actually, I already had a bond with him before he knew it.
Yes.
Right. Of course, he's been a, kind of a supporter of Epoch Times for. We've known he's been friendly. He's come to some of our fundraisers and so forth. But this was before I knew him.
Yeah.
And he has a deep for I think decades he's been kind of his family is involved in.
Is he Chinese?
Medical.
Is he part Chinese?
He's part Filipino.
Part Filipino, because you mentioned he was Asian. He did
It lets him. Yeah, he says I can make jokes like this because I'm part Filipino. His mother on his mother's side. Yeah, he has his book is amazing. You want to learn a bit about Filipino culture? Read his book. You can.
My oldest children are jalapenos, half Hawley, half Filipino. So, I'm going to read his book. But and his questions and his commentary were layered with depth of knowledge. I thought this is a man who knows what he's talking about, and it wasn't a quick Google search or ChatGPT, give me some talking points. I was like, this is a man
No, he's a wildly thoughtful human being. And again, like it's weird because actors, right? Like you sort of sometimes you just imagine they're like their characters, but why would that be the case? They're actors.
No, and they're empaths.
It doesn't make sense.
Like actors, to be a good actor, you have to be empathy. You have empathy.
Yeah.
And sometimes their empathy consumes them.
And not just be the copy machine guy on Saturday Night Live.
Yeah, right? that guy's
like, I was quoting that stuff. I wasn't allowed to watch Saturday Night Live as a kid, by the way, just as a fun.
You had
fun
good
fact.
Parents.
Well, no, I think my parents were deeply offended by the superfan skit. Which is like the Polish sort of guys that are like in cardiac arrest for eating too much Polish sausage and all that.
That was about Chicago.
Yeah. No. I know. Well. So except that it kind of was about the Polish. Get the Polish sausage. Anyway,
that's true.
And I said, like, it was kind of offensive to Poles actually when you think about it, right? But so I didn't realize why I couldn't watch it, but I think that was the reason, right? But I didn't. But I quoted the copy machine guy. The things, the Jason Stir, all that. Yeah, but I didn't know it was Rob Schneider. I had no idea.
Living most of my life in Hawaii, I loved him in 50 First Dates. I was like, how does this guy got a Hawaiian pigeon down? But he asked a question. They're like all great questions. Is obvious, but you wouldn't have thought of it yourself. So I was like, I'm going to ask that question because it was, that's the most obvious question, but I would have never thought of it. And it was the last question he asked, which was also very thoughtfully put at the last. He said, what about us? If you're wealthy, if you're privileged, especially with today's technological developments, we're all going to be in a position where we may be placed in this position where we can ourselves become a part of this exploitative market where I might die, but there's a way for me not to die. And they'll launder it. They'll give us plausible deniability. So we'll say, no. It was an ethically sourced organ that they found for me in 48 hours. Don't worry, they have this great system with these apps and whatever it is. They're going to launder it just to give us plausible deniability. And he asked you, what would you say to somebody that said, if I don't take this organ, I'm going to die? What would you say to them? And so I will give you Rob's question back at you.
For me,
you say to us.
For me, the obvious question. I suspect also a lot of people watching the show understand that we will be judged by our Creator, and we're going to have that discussion.
With him.
Exactly. And so it's pretty clear the decision you have to make here. Like I'm saying, when thinking about this organ, like you can't be happy with someone's life being taken so that you can live. That's not I don't think that opens the doors to heaven for anybody. Okay. I would say it opens another door, the one you don't want to go down, right? So, but even for people that might not be, understand that there's a higher power that we're accountable to, okay? You have children, like you're this posterity, like do you really want this to be your legacy? Is this the lesson you want to teach your children, that this is fine and good and right? I don't think so.
Yeah, we're put here to leave here. And your thoughtfulness to posterity to me is very important. With transhumanism, which is a bigger question, but this is a part of transhumanism. And you'd mentioned the hot mic incident with Xi and Putin, where they were talking about immortality because of these organs, or they could live to be 150.
Yeah. That was just totally mind-blowing to me, that hot mic. Because it showed me that, like, I knew that they had this elite longevity project, which is like 10 years more. I mean, by some measures, I don't know if this is true. I don't have the official numbers, but by some measures, 10 years longer super elites in China are living. How is that happening? Well, I knew there was forced organ harvesting, okay? And I knew that there's this Project 981, which is the elite longevity specific project to develop this elite longevity. The target is 150 years. That's something that she said that, made me suddenly put these things together. And I'm like, oh wow, of course they're using the organs as part of that elite longevity project. I just hadn't conceived of that entirely, if that makes sense, right? Like this was actually very kind of scary in a way for me, because we estimate it's about a $9 billion annual industry, very approximate number based on 60 to 90 or 60 to 100,000 transplants per year. But what is it? If you're a super elite, you just have unlimited access to organs in perpetuity. Yeah. Right? If you're in communist China and you're a red card holder, you have access to that elite healthcare system. That's just over 10 million people, I think, is that have. It's a very, very exclusive club. Maybe it's even smaller. I don't know the people that have but people have unlimited access to organs. Some people that are, to use the Animal Farm term, the people that are more equal than others. Yeah. Okay. That's crazy. That's worth. I mean, I was talking with someone on a podcast about this. What would this be worth? And the person said, to someone who has no moral boundary, of course, this is what we're talking about, right? They said, oh, that would be worth everything. That would be worth everything, right? Like, what, $9 billion, psh, right?
Yeah, so, no, you're right. It would be worth everything.
Yeah, so
we have this in our heart. We know we're created for eternity, but if we don't believe in God, then we still have this desire for eternity, but we're becoming vampires. Yeah. And you said it, like, it's the thoughtfulness to our posterity. Even in the United States, we see folks, our super elite, pouring billions of dollars into transhumanism. Their obsession is transhumanism. It's not preparing the world to leave to our posterity better than we found it. It's just, how can I eke out 10 more years?
You just reminded me of something, Scott Atlas, I'm getting kind of shivers up my spine thinking about it. Scott Atlas has something that he says repeatedly. Scott Atlas was one of kind of heroes of the COVID time. He tried to educate, for example, the Trump White House about some of the directions, the sort of what bad actors were convincing the White House to kind of go in a very strange direction that didn't make sense based on the data. This is when Scott was sort of getting frustrated. He was trying to advise because he was an advisor, right, to the president, but he wasn't able to get the audience to express his views. But he kept saying this, and at the beginning I didn't fully understand it, okay? But he said, we sacrificed children on the altar of the adults. That's not the exact quote, but very close, okay, to how he said it. I just kept thinking about that, right? Basically, what he means is that we implemented policies that would help adults at the expense of children, right? Which is a shocking thing to do, because, again, talk about for the entire history of humanity, for very good reason.
Our founding fathers.
For a very good reason, like, our children are the future, and you can never, like, this is the one thing you can never sacrifice, right? Like, you can't do that.
Our posterity would always right for us and our posterity. They always were thinking of their posterity. And this is where I want to bring it back to China. You've said in the past, and you said last night, that this doesn't come out of nowhere. This isn't shockingly unexpected if you know the history of China. And Mark Twain said that history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes.
Yeah.
Can you tell us what this rhymes with? Can we go back? Like, how does this become inevitable? You know, you have.
I would say, let me answer the question slightly obliquely.
Okay.
The Chinese Communist Party, in its atheist mentality, and its number one goal of always maintaining the supremacy and survival of the Communist Party. This is kind of Lenin's innovation, right? That the party is supreme in communist societies. And the CCP has really taken that to heart. In their mind, the mind of the regime, so to speak, they instrumentalize everything. This is a word that's hard for some people to pronounce, but basically what it means is they will use as a tool, you know, whatever it is, human bodies. And the
Catholic Church.
The Catholic Church is a perfect example, right, with this horrible Vatican deal we've talked about before. When I say, by the way, when I say horrible Vatican deal, just to clarify what I mean, right, is I think the Vatican made a deal with China to try to make life better for Catholic believers in China. But the effect has been much worse for Catholic believers and everybody else in China. That's what I mean by horrible deal. I still don't understand how it could possibly be in place. But
well, when you understand,
that's a whole.
I'm a Catholic, so I can smack the church around. Okay, you had a disgraced Cardinal McCarrick. If there's one person that was susceptible to CCP control, who was a compromised human being that led a brazenly immoral life, and was in a position of power and influence, brokered this deal. So when you have a deal that was brokered by a disgraced cardinal, and this deal has been devastating to the Catholic community, but I would say even if it was not devastating, like what I love about being Catholic, and I'm an adult convert, and this is what most attracted me because it most felt with what is in my desire in my heart. I think most of us, all of us, I don't see anybody as my other. And when Jesus said, love your enemy, you know, really that says there's no other. And as Paul said, there's no longer Jew or Gentile, that there was this division that was stark. Then there's no longer an other. So what does that mean? Are Falun practitioners my other? Am I going to make a deal that makes them vulnerable? And more than that, as a Christian, I should put myself in a vulnerability for their well-being. I should make them vulnerable for my well-being. That's antichrist. That's antithesis of what is the gospel of Jesus Christ. So when you have a deal that makes other communities vulnerable with the goal of making our community more secure, that undermines the mission and witness of the church.
Well, and the horrible irony, of course, is that it didn't actually make.
Oh, it's made us. Jimmy Lai's going to die in prison.
Right.
Bishops are being disappeared. Most of those Hong Kong activists that were brutalized and vanished were Catholics. The church, CCP is committing the one crime the church never forgives. They're ordaining their own bishops. How is the communist? What if Donald Trump started making bishops? Like, what would we do? The Republican Party, I think they'd make me a bishop, okay? What would people think of that? But the CCP? So, I forgive me for venting, but as a Catholic, to me, it's a grave scandal because it is my faith that inspires me to do the work that I do and to see the church doing this. But you said it earlier. It's what they do. They say, hey, if you do this little evil, it'll do so much good for these people you care about. So just let it out. But
they're very, so like I said, I have a whole chapter in this book, which I think is one of the most important chapters. It's about how they make people complicit in all sorts of ways, including their own people. It's a central feature, right? By just little, maybe this is something where I don't know how much time we have today, but I'll probably let people read about that themselves. But they're ingenious in how to bite away at our moral high ground, and I think that's our soul actually. But they try to subvert you, try to make you not lose that moral high ground, the thing that you're proud of, that I'm made in the image of God. I have my own rights. I have my own ability to make my own decisions. I can stand up to tyranny. They kind of make it so it's almost impossible, right? Almost. If there's still heroic people that break the mold, and for good reason we think of them as heroes. But yeah.
Well, it's always the minority that stands up. That's why they're heroes. And we all imagine that we would be that person, but then in reality, when we know that to be heroic means I might be taken away, then who's going to care for my children and my wife, or my family, or my business partners might suffer.
Well, so that's part of their approach, right? They force you into impossible situations where you have to make one very bad, immoral decision, or be faced with an even darker choice, the darker reality. Like, for example, an example would be, this is one example. Actually, my mother faced this in Poland, right? So my mother was not an activist. By the way, my mother, just we're talking about Catholics, my mother is like, when I started writing this book, she's like, adding a rosary a day for you, buddy. This is like, she's very serious, like a very serious Catholic. Like, in fact,
she's worried for you because this is courageous.
I haven't figured out how this works, but somehow on my phone, I put my phone on silent, right? But somehow the one person that can get through that, I'm like in the middle of an interview, it's like, right? And she's like, listen, I want to tell you about it. I was just praying, and anyway, I don't think it's wild.
As Catholics, this is why we ask Mary to pray for us.
I'm gonna have to ask someone to figure out how to fix this. No, because it's actually I can't take the call, but I'm like, I'd like to. She's a huge supporter. She's a huge supporter.
You just gave the best apology for the rosary. Actually, people are like, Protestants be like, why do you ask Mary to pray for you? Can't you just pray to God yourself? No, because sometimes he puts his cell phone on silent, but when his mother calls, he answers the phone. It
was, but like, it's not. I don't know if I subconsciously programmed it. I wasn't aware that I created this vulnerability or whatever. I'm just kidding, but. Anyway, but I'm gonna have to give her a call soon because she wants to know about what happened last night. The big event and everything. But
you call her. I don't know if
you
may already know, and I'm friends with the family. Is Father Jerzy Popieski.
Yeah, Popiełuszko is amazing.
Forgive my Anglo.
No, of course. But
I just call him Father Jerzy.
But talk about a hero, right, of communist time, right?
Yes.
That he gave his life to stand up for freedom.
And he was, I know his family, and they talk about Father Jerzy, and I see pictures of him at the beach in Florida and having fun with his family. And, we like to think of these heroes as ascetic monks, but no, they can be comedians, they can be silly, they can be, every type of personality produces heroes. And Father Jerzy was like a prankster, like a lighthearted, fun guy that was murdered by the KGB and thrown into an icy river.
Well, and so see, my mom was not like this big activist, like a Popiełuszko or something like that. But she was like, there's those people, that's a very small number. Then there's people who are kind of passive resistors, and I think my mom was in that category. There are people that are like, you don't learn Russian, because in Poland they viewed it as Russian occupation. Everybody, that didn't matter, left or right, whatever. It's just obvious, right? So Soviet Russian. And so you don't learn Russian. You just try to avoid being involved with any of these types of people, basically the sort of the commissars and the Communist Party members and all that. But eventually they force you, right? So one day she gets called into the security office, and they're, comrade, I'm kind of paraphrasing here, comrade, we'd like to find out what your friend was doing last night. It's for the good of the party and the good of society, comrade. Please let us know. And so with these people, like the way it's been described to me, they're typically like, they have a very kind of cold stare, and there's not a lot of life going on, and you really don't ever say no to these people. Saying no to these people is kind of like bad. Okay, so what you do is, what she said was something like, I'm not really made out to do this kind of thing, right? Which they ended up letting her go, but she lost her, basically lost her passport, lost her ability to travel, things like this. And there's this kind of amazing kind of quirk of fate. That's also the thing that decided her that she had to leave, right? Because she said she didn't want to have children in this sort of society, right? And so she figured out, it's a long story, I'm not going to leave it here, but she figured out how to get out with the help of some pretty strong alcohol. And anyway, a lot of there's a really interesting
that's
story
a whole other show when you're not in the middle of a massive book tour.
But yeah, but my point is what happens next, see, in that situation, right? What has happened to a lot of people is the next thing the guy, like commissar, says is, well, okay, you don't have to tell me what your husband, let's say, was doing last night, or your wife, but actually, but your daughter, my comrade over there, he's over there with your daughter in school. So we want to make sure that she's safe, right? Are you sure you don't want to tell me, what your wife did, right? And you probably tell, because you have to make the choice. Do I, tell on my spouse, or do I risk something harm happening to? And you don't even know what's going to happen. They don't even have to do it every time. You just know that it's in the collective consciousness that these people do horrible things to people.
This is satanic,
right?
Putting a wedge in the family.
Well, no, exactly. And now you've made that choice. You never wanted to. You wanted to be pure. You wanted to be moral. But you've had to make that choice, right? And now you've been knocked down a bit, and now you're easier to control. Every communist society works this way. They want to control. They're obsessed with this kind of control, not just over your mind and soul. That's what they want.
We saw this during COVID policy. They were going crazy at those of us that wouldn't get the vaccine.
Well, so this is what's interesting. I think that this totalitarian impulse, famous line from Solzhenitsyn, my favorite, right? The line between good and evil cuts through every human heart.
That's
right? And so we have this, divine side, and we have this, let's call it, demonic side. There's these, but I think in the Christian tradition, you have these little cartoons talking, and you have to make you're going to get your greater angels and your lesser demons are going to be, you're going to be tempted in different directions. You're going to be forced to make, decisions and so forth. But
so we shouldn't judge people harshly who fall, because we don't, even if sometimes we make a courageous decision, we don't know next time we might not have the courage and we buckle. And so we should it's sorrowful when we see this happen to people.
100%. At the same time, we have to understand that we're looking at people who have been systematically brutalized psychically and spiritually, right? And that's just a fact. So it's like that doesn't mean you sit around judging someone and saying they're evil or something like that. No, in fact, quite the opposite, right? Because this is the beautiful thing about Catholicism and Christianity and Falun Gong and different kind of very traditional faiths, I think, is that redemption is there to be found. Exactly. And you just, of course, you have to want it and you have to work for it. It doesn't come for free.
And
right?
Forgiveness.
It takes some serious resolve, right? I think. But anyway,
well, I want to end on this.
A lot of different open.
I want to end on this because this book is important. Everyone, you need to just buy this book today. You should buy a couple of books, one for you, one for your parish priest, because I think there's 3 or 4 of the greatest tragedies in the history of the world, but I'm only going to talk about 3 because one will get into a present controversy I don't want to talk about. But 3 of the greatest tragedies in world history that they're so tragic, we don't even think about them. One is the fall of Constantinople. We had Greek civilization going back from 500 BC until 1571, I think, AD or thereabout. People are going to correct me. It's 73, I forget. That was a devastating loss. Devastating. Then World War I. It shattered Europe and paved the way for these totalitarian ideologies. We talk about World War II all the time. We don't talk about World War I, and I think it's because it was such a psychic scar in the human family.
It really changed. I mean, it birthed a ton of nihilism, basically.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
We were talking about Hemingway and the nihilism we saw in the 20s. They called it the lost generation. And then we're living through the third, and that is this ideology of this perverted Western ideology, communism, through a Chinese lens, that is devastating a world civilization, a great ancient world civilization. First we had the revolution, the famine, the fear of childbirth because of all of the death and destruction and sorrow, the Cultural Revolution, the one-child policy. The way I look at it is you had a war on the ancestors, a war on your descendants, and now this is cannibalism. This is a war. You went from destroying your ancestors to eating your descendants, to now you're consuming yourself. This is what the CCP is doing. And so you've written a book that talks about one of the greatest sorrows in the history of the human family. And just like fall of Constantinople, just like World War I, we don't talk about it. Like what has been happening in China since 1949 until today, it's one horror after another, and each horror is worse than the next. What comes after this? So my question to you is...
See, I just want to mention, and specious, like with this veneer, with powerful propaganda, this is the thing that they're the best at, to create, that we want to believe.
Yeah.
That paints it as, the getting millions out of poverty, lifting millions. This is you've heard this, right?
I used to have interns from China, and I've heard all the stories.
I have to comment on this, right? Yes, but the the part they missed out is that they started at a point where, during the Great Leap Forward, they drove the society to actual cannibalism, actually eating their children, because there was nothing at that level, that extreme, horrible, like just unimaginable, I don't even know if you call it poverty, but like depth of human despair they created. And they say, yeah, we lifted people out of that. Well, yeah, because you were going to lose power, and that's all you care about.
Yeah, I read a story of one of the architects of the one-child policy. She had to eat coal, not to starve. And watching children die in this kind of poverty led to the fear of children, which led to the one-child policy.
And this is just, I know we want to finish up, but even these leaders, right? I interviewed someone with a biography of a man named Hu Yaobang, amazing book, and it actually does show the real mind of the CCP. That's why I found it so powerful. It's a biography, deeply researched, but also, very clear that the person understands. This is Robert Sudinger. I always say his name wrong, but he just wrote an amazing book. I had him on the show, American Thought Leaders, recently. But even the leaders, when you read this book, and he hasn't even new research in here, this guy was the amount of suffering. This guy was called the conscience of China, actually. But he was a fervent Maoist at one point in his life, right? It eventually was purged by his own party, okay, because he disagreed with a point of the top leader, okay? But he suffered. He was purged like 13 times or something. It's just unbelievable. It's not just the people. Like even
Xi suffered.
Even all
his
these
family
people,
suffered.
all these
his
people.
father.
It's this horrible ideology of struggle and suffering, and creates like death and despair, and just kind of locks people into this system. It's really. And this has been the hard. I try the real reason for this. Okay,
Yeah.
2/3 of the book is really about how this forced organ harvesting is the lens to understand how the system works more broadly, right? And it's really, I mean, you use the term satanic. I think that's probably very accurate, but it's just it's a humanity destroying. It's a deeply anti-humanity system. Right, and we really have to understand what we're dealing with when we deal with them. I'm not an isolationist. I don't believe we should go hide from the reality. No, we have to figure out how to engage the right way. But you have to understand who you're dealing with.
Well,
and
people
the
have said to
mentality.
me, because I'm an anti-war conservative, and they'll say,
Yeah.
Jason, when you talk about China, these are neocon talking points for us to go to war with China. And I said, I'm just telling you the truth.
Yeah.
This is what's happening.
Yeah, no,
that doesn't mean that we start World War III, but it means we thoughtfully work to free the people of China from the CCP, because we thought that through engagement they would become like us. We are becoming like them.
And we're responsible.
The world
we
order
built that.
is becoming
We built
like
that regime.
them. The
right?
Middle East and Africa is being colonized by the ideology of the CCP and its morals, and corrupted and brutalized. And so to free the CCP is to free the world and to save a civilization. And so that's where I want to and on this, it's what can we do? I got to take my kid to soccer, my daughter to ballet. I've got parent-teachers conference tonight. I got to rake the yard. My boss is yelling at me. I got to get this done. And now you want me to end forced organ harvesting in China, But then we tell ourselves we're a constitutional republic. We're the sovereigns of this country. So that's true. An American citizen is the most powerful individual on the planet Earth. We have an ability to change things. So what do we do? What do we do to help liberate the people of China from the yoke of the CCP? And as a Catholic, to me, that's liberating the body of Christ from the oppression of the CCP. Pope Leo said last week, it was something that was striking, and I'm a great admirer of Pope Leo. For many reasons. We're both from the same neighborhood, and we're both Chicago White Sox fans. His favorite pizzas are Aurelio's. That was my first job. But I'm a great admirer of his. But he said something striking last week. He was asked to comment on Jimmy Lai's basically death sentence, life in prison, effectively, because he's an elderly man. A prominent Catholic layman, a hero, and he said, I cannot comment on that. He didn't say, I won't. He measured his words. He was saying something to us. I think what he was saying is, I'm shackled. The church made an agreement. I'm bound by that agreement, and I'm not allowed to criticize the CCP. So I think, and we have two main goals this year for my organization, the Vulnerable People Project. One is to make sure that the CCP Vatican deal is not continued. That we break that deal, that it's not reissued. It's up for renewal. It's not renewed. So I think all of us as Catholics, we can talk about this, we can write about this, we can talk to our parish priest about this, we can pray on this. But what would you say to our audience on how we can work, read your book, share the information in a way that is not, it's like we were talking about the Uyghur genocide designation. We made the designation, now we're just living with the contradiction.
Right.
How do we move past living with the contradiction? That's the first question. And then the last thing I want to ask you is, yesterday, and you can answer them together, Rob Schneider said, you and I will never be able to go to China. I'm also not allowed in China, so that's three of us. And my wife is sorrowful about this, being Chinese. I said, no, we're going to China.
Yeah.
And because I'm arrogant, I say, and we're going to go do a ribbon cutting at the elementary school they named after me in East Turkestan. Okay, so we're going to China. You're going to China. In fact, you'll have the biggest show, and NTD and Epoch Times will go from number 4 in America to number 1 in the world. This is going to happen, and I'm the guy that was saying since 1989 Roe v. Wade will overturn. People thought it was wild. We live in a post-Roe America. To me, this is as clear as that.
It's absolutely.
Let me. I'm sorry. I'm not the best host like you, so I want to get this. I want to. What can we do, and what does a post-CCP China look like for China in the world?
Okay. Well,
two simple questions.
Two questions for a whole other episode.
Two simple questions.
Well, what we can do. So I have a very easy answer for the first one. What we can do.
Okay.
I actually have an appendix in this book that explains what you can do at the municipal, complete grassroots, municipal, state, federal, every level. Even if you're not someone that's particularly active and wants to do stuff, there's even this is the amazing thing. So I'm a newly minted Rotarian, by the way.
Congratulations.
The reason I've become a Rotarian, by the Rotary Club, it's like a service organization. I used to work with them all the time.
Chicago founded organization.
Well, so they just in small communities, they're people oriented in service, and I was running international youth programs. They were super helpful always, wherever I would go. Wonderful. I knew I could count on them, right? And so the reason I became a Rotarian, though, is they actually had created a satellite virtual Rotary Club dedicated entirely to ending forced organ harvesting in China. This exists, right? And what they do is it's courageous and awesome.
Because you think the Rotary Club, are there Rotary chapters in China? There must be.
Yeah. I don't know. I hadn't even thought of that.
Rotary International.
I haven't even thought of that. But my point is, they're putting on screenings of films. They're putting on I think they're getting interested in this book and getting it into libraries. And just, I had a whole bunch of Rotarians, they had me at a conference recently talking before this book was I think it was maybe right when it was starting to be written. Anyway, my point is that even if you're not someone that's super active, almost anyone can join a Rotary Club in America. It's quite democratized. Other places it's a very elite thing. In America, it's pretty democratized.
You got to get up at 5:30 in the morning.
But. Yeah, you have to want it, but you don't have to be like the person who organizes people to do stuff. You can join for something that you have people already who are organizing themselves to do stuff and just be a part of it, right? At a very, very grassroots level. It's a wonderful organization. That's why I'm a newly minted Rotarian. But or if you're at the federal level, there's this bill that's in the Senate that is the most bipartisan issue you could think about. There's actually two that are in the Senate right now. It's this Falun Gong and Victims of Forced Organ Harvesting Protection Act. That's this newly brought up one, Cruz and Merkley. There's another one called the Stop Forced Organ Harvesting Act, which has been also passed by the House near unanimously. And again, it's a little bit broader than just focusing on China, but still very good legislation that has some teeth for the first time. Okay, and there's even a third one in committee in the House about not having Medicare and Medicaid pay for China transplants and stuff. So there's debate. I'm trying to say state level legislation. 6 states have now passed it. There's model legislation. If you're in a state house, if you're involved in state level politics, there's 44 states to go to pass no-brainer, nonpartisan, excellent legislation to reduce our own involvement in this. Okay, I mean, so I go into there's a lot more.
Create a website.
There's a lot more that you can do
to promote this book, and we're going to take that appendix 2.
Perfect.
And we're going to do a checklist and ask people to print it out and do what they can do. But the first thing we can do is get this book.
100%, because that's also this is an issue where awareness actually changes the world in a way, because it's so obvious. We do not participate in forced organ harvesting, right? It's no one. That's why I think getting it to the floor in the Senate would be great, because it's really hard to vote against these bills.
And
like
then,
this,
and
right?
you get it to the floor of the Senate, even if it doesn't pass the first time, the whole world's going to be watching.
Well, so let's see how that goes. I'd love to see people get on board. But so at every level you're operating, state, whatever. There's really something you can do. And the awareness. Why is the awareness? Because it's monstrous, right? And no one ultimately wants to be on the hook for this. The way that they deal with this is they just attack the messenger. They really have no credible response ever, right? There's a whole body of knowledge around what happened with this in this China Tribunal, ChinaTribunal.org, that all the evidence up to 2020, amazingly well documented, voluminous. They spent 2 years, a whole international tribunal basically looking through it. So what I'm trying to say is that the evidence is powerful and compelling, if you want to look, to support everything that's being said. And so if we agree, having a large number of people understand this is true and real, really changes the world. 100 calls to a senator's office makes them very interested in an issue, right? This, yeah. So anyway, that I think the book can be a bit of a catalyst, and that's why thank you so much for encouraging people to get it this week, because this is the week.
Well, the
that
Jason
counts,
Jones
right?
Show's not getting the book. They're getting the book.
Yeah.
Their Jason Jones Show's going to get the book.
Okay. But no, and also just your thinking that this is good for VPP for Vulnerable People's Project as a.
No, I said it when I bought the 500 book copies. You're like, I can't believe. Thank you so much. I'm like, no, I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing this for our mission. This is. I have been working so hard to break this Vatican CCP deal.
And just I want to
be
clear.
When I
mention just something
copy,
this is not a good idea just for Catholics. It's really for everybody. I've talked about this, right? Because it basically anything that gives the CCP a veneer of legitimacy, which is what it does. It's saying the Catholic Church just kind of we think it's reasonable to deal with these people in this kind of have this kind of partnership. But the partnership is literally subverting the church. It's horrible, right?
Yeah, you should know something about the audience.
Yeah.
They know I'm Catholic. I think I sometimes I think I'm subtle. I'm never subtle. People say you're never subtle.
I've never thought you were subtle.
I think I'm clever and subtle, and people are like, that's what you think? I'm like, yeah. They're like, no. But a large portion of our audience is in the Middle East. We have a very large Muslim audience. And the genocide of the Uyghur is the greatest crime in the world today. I mean, 3 million, Department of Defense says 3 million. It's from 1 to 3 million Uyghur in concentration camps.
It's atrocious, and it's and it's this unique situation too, because they're basically completely, it's a police state up there, and they do, they're doing horrible things to them. They're forcing them to assimilate.
And they're corrupting governments across the Gulf, Turkey.
Yeah.
So it's about not having our countries, our cultures, our faith communities corrupted.
Yeah.
To liberating us from the CCP's corrosive influence, because when we did the MFN deal, the United States became more like China. When we did the secret Vatican CCP deal, our church is becoming more like the CCP. You have a prominent Cardinal Parolin of all things, going to a human organ trafficking conference and coming back and talking about how wonderful it was. This is shameful and embarrassing, and it's corrupting us.
You had a second question, which is important. And
Yes.
I want to make sure you remind me what it is.
This is the most important question, because I always organize, I try to, in the hero's journey. We need to start, in the ordinary world. We look at the problem.
Oh yes, of course.
And then
what is the China without the CCP look like, right?
What does the CCP look like?
Oh my God, it's an incredible future. Well, not just for China, right? So because as you actually kind of pointed out, right, the Chinese Communist Party for China is this twisted, evil Western import, kind of like this, parasitic squid or something, on top of, they tried to destroy this, the 5,000 years of Chinese culture. They were probably the most effective in destroying culture of any communist regime, which is really saying something. But that culture is powerful. And it's still there.
Deep roots.
It's still there, very deep roots. Some of it's being rebirthed here in America through, Xinjiang, exactly, and so forth. That's a whole nother incredible story. But I think we've gotten soft in America. I think we've gotten really soft. And see, the stereotype about China, the Chinese, okay, is that they're unbelievably hardworking people. And this is a stereotype that's true. It's like almost across the board. It's an astonishing thing, right? So right now what you have is this totalitarian regime on an amazing civilization, as you pointed out, okay, that's been, parasitic on the West, parasitic on its own people, instrumentalizing its own people to keep power, instrumentalizing America, instrumentalizing
Western
everything.
Virus with
right?
that pulled in Chinese DNA.
Yeah. The Chinese characteristics, that's itself as a whole. I actually talk about in here. There's some amazing insights about how these Chinese characteristics actually work. They did so-called innovate communism a little bit, but the problem is there's no real innovation. Right? Like they have to steal it all from elsewhere. In the totalitarian mind frame, it's this obsessive control. And the freedom is needed to come up with new ideas, think about things, flourish, all of this stuff. That's why these systems are always parasitic. Now, imagine a free China, okay, unleashing the latent potential of the Chinese people. Look at Taiwan. Taiwan, by the way, 3 times the per capita GDP of China. A lot of people don't know this. It's weird, right? We think, China's an economic miracle. 40% of the population in China is really poor, like really well below poverty, unimaginably poor for us. Okay, that's the kind of so that's part of the reason, by the way, why the CCP doesn't like Taiwan, because it shows like what can the Chinese people do without a CCP? Well, apparently they can do a lot of great things, actually, right? So unleashing China, the latent potential of China, 100%. I think it will give us a run for our money. I think it will give us, hey, wait a second, those guys are kicking butt the legitimate way, right? Like this. See, I mean, this is another topic for a whole other show, but that regime cannot exist without siphoning our IP, our money, all this stuff from free societies. It can only exist, and our goodwill, frankly, right? It exists only because of that, right? But an actual China that has that opportunity will become very strong in its own right, and it will make us have to kind of live up to our promise, the promise of our founders. These amazing, the self-organization that de Tocqueville found and believed very presciently would make America unbelievable and indomitable. Like I think we need to be challenged a bit more.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that would do that. So that's my hope for a free China. And I think it could be just around the corner.
And like you said,
it's a very brittle regime.
It's going to enrich the world. When the most orthodox, like if you're a Catholic, you're a faithful Catholic, there's one American bishop that we all look to, And he passed away in 1979. His name was Archbishop Fulton Sheen. Your mom loves him, I'm sure. Archbishop Fulton Sheen used to say, before he passed away, that when China is liberated from communism, it will bless the West, because the West, with the Enlightenment, severed the transcendent from the immanent. We're losing this profound sense of transcendence. And if you go see Xinjiang, you can see what Archbishop Fulton Sheen is talking about, because you're in awe of this transcendence that's communicated. Archbishop Fulton Sheen said, and he's on his way to sainthood. He's actually going to be beatified. I don't know if we're allowed to talk about this yet. I think it's in September in Illinois, and I can't wait to be there. But he said that when this sense of the transcendence of Chinese civilization is liberated from the CCP, it will flood the West. And the West fundamentally is this marrying of the transcendent and the immanent, which was ripped apart with the Enlightenment. And so it's not just about blessing China, the people of China, but it's about, allowing the world to breathe with two lungs, because this is one of the great civilizations in the world. And so it's like we're breathing with one lung. Now we're breathing with half a lung, maybe quarter of a lung. Let's breathe fully with two lungs.
That's genuinely beautiful. I think I couldn't say this. I couldn't say it better myself.
Do you know why you think it's beautiful? Because I'm paraphrasing and plagiarizing a great Polish man, Karol Wojtyła, or you know him as Pope John Paul the Great. He often talked about the world needs to breathe with two lungs. And
Saint Pope John Paul.
Saint Paul the Great, exactly. Well, Jan Jekielek, I can't believe you gave me this much time. As an author, I know how stressful book launch day is, and that you gave us this much time on the Jason Jones Show to discuss your book. And I just want to thank you not only for your book, but for Epoch Times. And I've said this to you before, you have this instinct birthed from empathy that orders service to those who've been abandoned to power and violence. And running the Vulnerable People Project, there's one publication that I know I can count on always to be there for those who've been abandoned by the world, and that's Epoch Times. And to know it's the #4 paper in the country is amazing. And I think it's probably the #1 that's actually read. I think a lot of us subscribe to papers that just fall in the door. But you're the #4 paper in the world. And so I just want to thank you for your life's work. This book is the result of a life's work. And it's important, and it's important now. And I can't wait to go on a book tour with you across China. And I think it's going to be very soon.
That'll be my dream. And, for those that may want to get the book, a very easy way to do it is killedtoorder.com.
Now, if we go to killedtoorder.com,
that's the Amazon link. You can just get it quick, right? So it just goes. You can also get it in bookstores. If people want to go to a bookstore and see if it's there, and if it's not, say, hey guys, I like one. That'll actually get them to order a few. Usually they just don't order one if they're bringing them in. So that's a way. It's at Barnes and Noble. It's at different places. It's just a lot of people have Amazon, so I think that's the quick. Some people just need the quick.
And it's important to get you on that bestseller list. As a guy that makes movies and writes books, when we push this to the top of the list, book buyers go, we need to order more of these books. We need a front shelf them. We need to put them on the end caps. Let's get this going. And what we were going to do at VPP is we were going to create a website and say for every donation of $20, you get a free book. And I thought, no. That's not going to impact the numbers for Amazon and the New York Times, because we would be buying from the wholesaler.
Right.
So we're not doing that.
Okay.
And we're not doing that for a reason.
Okay.
We're not doing that for a reason. We're going to do that later. But right now, it's to get this book on the New York Times bestseller list, to get this book at the top of every category that it qualifies for on Amazon, because this means more people are going to see it. And almost as importantly, it means it's going to really aggravate the CCP. And aggravating the CCP warms my heart. So I think
I'm not particularly. I'm kind of indifferent to the aggravation. I would just like to see some justice and some awareness.
You're a better man than me. I just see it as a little bit of retribution. I just see it as a little bit of.
No,
so
I mean, I truly. This is the hardest part, right? If I may just comment on this, okay? In the CCP's mind, everything is this political thing, and anything that isn't entirely in line with their vision is an affront That's how they think about it. It's an affront. No, you have to completely subject yourself to it, or there's something wrong with you, right? Like this is the problem. So you want it like this is not. There's nothing. This is the most purely written thing you can imagine. I mean, truly, right? And but for them, of course, it's going to be the greatest affront because they have a kill to order industry, right? And are they going to be aggravated? Probably. Okay, and is that aggravation a measure of how much actual influence it has? Probably. Okay, but I don't want that. Yeah. I'm not looking to aggravate anybody. I'm looking to stop forced organ harvesting in China.
That's what I want to do.
And the persecution of Falun Gong practitioners in China, and the persecution of Catholics in China, right? And just let people have these basic core First Amendment rights to be protected from government, right? This is
anthropologists say. I've heard an anthropologist will define the Homo sapien, our species, as the species that worships. If that's what we are fundamentally, it doesn't matter what your religion is. If we just say that's what we are, we're a species that worships. The CCP, and you have Ambassador Brownback, who's a great American hero, wrote your forward, and he courageously went to China and said to them, "You've declared a war on religion, and religion is going to win." Like, that was awesome when he was Ambassador at Large for Religious Liberty. When we all recognize fundamentally that we are a creature, we're beings that were created, and we were created to worship. If that's the truth, when you have a regime that forbids this, what our purpose here is, that's anti-human. Nothing it can do from there is good. And so this book is key to waking us up to our biggest adversary, the CCP, and I believe the CCP is our biggest adversary. We're distracted by a lot of adversaries. But the biggest threat is the CCP. And I don't want the CCP to be our peer. I don't want to live in a multipolar world where we're competing with India, Russia, and China. I want to live in a unipolar world. I want to live in a world where there's a rule of law, where the nations work together in cooperation, and where everyone's rights are protected from Beijing to Boston. And this book's important. So Jan, again, I just can't thank you enough, brother.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Yeah.
Now I got to give a speech 3 hours away in 2 hours and 45 minutes, but I drive fast, guys. I just want to thank you. Please go to Amazon.com or your local bookstore to get the book, and get it today. And I would get a book for your parish priest. I'm definitely giving a book to my parish and to my priest, Father Stephen. And because as a Catholic, the one thing that I can do, I know, is work to break this Vatican CCP deal. Go to our website, freeourbishops.com, and you can see how many Catholic bishops have literally, in the dark of night, been vanished by the CCP. And that is just the tip of the iceberg of the crimes the CCP is waging on the war on people of faith and the war on religion. So this book is just a very important first step. This episode, as always, has been brought to you by the Vulnerable People Project. We were founded to stand in solidarity with the most vulnerable people in the world when the world has walked away. Go to vulnerablepeopleproject.com, look around, see what we do. And if it's something you want to be a part of and you want to knit your life together in solidarity with the most vulnerable people on earth, click up on the right to that donate button and become a monthly donor. All right? Jan, it has been great to be in the studio. I know my paint. I used to be a paint salesman. That is Ralph Lauren paint. It's very rich. It's very beautiful. This is the studio. I'm a little jealous, but thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you so much, Jason. You're awesome.